Good morning. Thank you for joining me today. My little co-host dog. This morning we'll be in Psalm 122, verses 1 through 9. Another one of the Psalms of Ascent. I was glad because they said to me, "We will go to the Lord's temple." Our feet are standing inside your gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a city designed to accommodate an assembly. The tribes go up there, the tribes of the Lord, where it is required that Israel give thanks to the name of the Lord. Indeed, the leaders sit there on thrones and make legal decisions on the thrones of the house of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May those who love her prosper. May there be peace inside your defenses and prosperity inside your fortresses. For the sake of my brothers and my neighbors, I will say, may there be peace in you. For the sake of the temple of the Lord our God, I will pray for you to prosper. So joy at the city of Jerusalem, the temple, and its place, I suppose. From Guzik here. Psalm 122 carries the title, A Song of Ascents of David. It is one of the 4 songs of ascents that is specifically attributed to King David. He wrote it both for what Jerusalem was in his day and for what it would become under his son and their successors. David perhaps never made pilgrimage from a great distance to one of the major feasts, but he wrote Psalm 122 in the voice of one who did, and one who had arrived at the holy city. David wrote it for the people to sing at the time of their goings up in the holy feasts at Jerusalem. It comes third in the series, and appears to be suitable to be sung when the people had entered the gates, and their feet stood within the city. From Charles Spurgeon. I was glad when they said to me. David had in mind both the community, when they said, and the individual. I was glad. He pictured the individual coming together with the group to go into the house of the Lord. That invitation and the acceptance of it made him glad. Boise reflected on David's possible motive in writing Psalm 122. It is reasonable to suppose that he wrote it both to express joy in his new capital city and to encourage love for and loyalty toward it as the focal point of his nation's political life and worship. Let us go into the house of the Lord. During David's days, there was never a temple, but he knew one would be built, having extensively planned and prepared for it. It is possible that David wrote here of the pilgrimage to the tabernacle, which did exist in his day and was regarded as the house of the Lord. It's more likely that David wrote this psalm in anticipation of the pilgrims who would come to the house of the Lord built by Solomon. It is wonderful to think of David's extensive preparation for the people of Israel to come to the temple, especially for the required feasts 3 times a year. Let us go into the house of the Lord. Coming to God's house made David happy, though he knew that no building could contain God in all his glory and greatness. At the house of the Lord, he could focus his thoughts, prayers, worship, and receiving of God's word in the community of God's people in a special way, and David was glad for that. Too many don't know the gladness David sang of, either because they don't go into the house of the Lord, or because they do go, and it isn't a glad thing for them. We should go into the house of the Lord. It is good and important for us to gather with God's people for prayers, worship, and receiving of God's word. The gathering should be formal and ordered enough so that it is regarded as a gathering of God's house, not everyone doing their own thing, but God's people coming together for his glory and their benefit in his house. Our feet have been standing within your gates. Most regard this as David's description of the joyful statement of the pilgrim who has finally arrived. The most important aspect is the evident joy and gladness at coming to the destination. Jerusalem is built. David had conquered the city of Jerusalem, taking it from the Jebusites, who held it as a Canaanite stronghold. He built the city in his own day, and David rejoiced in declaring, Jerusalem is built. A city that is compact together. David's city of Jerusalem was not large, but it was not a disordered collection of tents and shacks. It was built, and built together in an orderly way. It was a real city. Where the tribes go up. One of the reasons David conquered Jerusalem and established it as the capital of both the political and religious life of Israel was because it did not previously belong to a specific tribe, being under Canaanite occupation. Since it belonged to no tribe, it belonged to all the tribes, and the tribes of the Lord could come together as one at Jerusalem and the house of the Lord. Christians today should reflect the same unity, even with their diversity. There is no such oneness in all the world as among true Christians, and this the very heathens observe and commended. As the curtains of the tabernacle were joined by loops, so were they by love. And as the stones of the temple were so close cemented together that they seemed to be all but one stone, so was it among the primitive saints. From Trapp. To the testimony of Israel. This describes the Ark of the Covenant, which was often called by this title. Representing the throne of God and his presence in Israel, the testimony of Israel was the center of the tabernacle and later the temple. To give thanks to the name of the Lord. The primary purpose of the feasts of Israel was for the people of God to come together and give him thanks. Their appreciation for what he had done gave them faith for what he would do in the future. For the thrones are set there for judgment. As the seat of government for Israel, Jerusalem was where their main courts for judgment were established. Jerusalem was to be a city of justice, where good was honored and where evil was corrected. The thrones of the house of David. David's house was established to reign over Israel. Saul's house never reigned, supplying really only one king. David's lineage reigned in Jerusalem and will reign forever in the Messiah, the son of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. David exhorted pilgrims coming to the holy city to pray for the peace of the city. Jerusalem's name itself marked it as the city of peace. But in reality it has known much war and conflict, which continues to this day. It is good to pray for the often elusive peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. David continued by giving a prayer for Jerusalem. The prayer included a blessing for those who love the city, and a direct request for peace and prosperity for the city. For the sake of my brethren and companions, David prayed for blessings for those who loved and prayed for Jerusalem, but the blessing was not only for the individual, but for the community of those who cared for the peace of Jerusalem, those who said, "Peace be with you." Because of the house of the Lord our God, David understood that the gladness and goodness of the pilgrim toward God's city was not primarily political in nature. It wasn't because of loyalty to a political leader or philosophy. It was because the house of the Lord was established there. Through it all is evident that the glory of city and temple consists in the fact that they are the city and house of Jehovah. It is not a song of buildings or of material magnificence. It is rather the song of assembly, of testimony, of judgment, of peace, and of prosperity. These all issues from the supreme fact of Jehovah's presence. From Morgan. This has a special application for the Christian under the new covenant. For us, the church is the house of the Lord, which Jesus, the head and son of the house, with Jesus, the head and son of the house. What makes the church special is that it is God's habitation, his house, his presence makes it special. I will seek your good, just as it was good for pilgrims in Israel to seek the good of Jerusalem for the sake of God's house, so Christians today can and should seek the good of society for the sake of God's house. Proverbs chapter 16, verses 19 through 20. It is better to be lowly in spirit with the afflicted than to share the spoils with the proud. The one who deals wisely in a matter will find success, and blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord. Yeah. Another of the Proverbs indicating how much God dislikes the proud and pride in general. Because pride is an abomination to God and leads to destruction, it isn't so bad to live among the lowly and to have a humble spirit than to divide the spoil with the proud. A humble life among the lowly is better than having reward, spoil, among the proud. This is because proud people are not pleasant company, and because it is never good to join those whom God is set against. He who heeds the words wisely will find good. Obedience to God, to heed his word, and to do it wisely will always bring good. This thought also suggests that there are unwise or foolish ways to heed the word, perhaps as the religious leaders in Jesus' day could strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. Yeah. Or condemn healing a man who is sick, but because it was done on the Sabbath day. Whoever trusts in the Lord, happy is he. The good that the obedient will find also comes because they have a true and confident trust in God. They can happily and calmly rest in the good God who loves and cares for them. From Spurgeon here. I've read a story of an old doctor of the church who, going out one morning, met a beggar and said to him, "I wish you a good day." "Sir," said he, "I never had an ill day in any life." "But," said the doctor, "your clothes are torn to rags, and your wallet seems to be exceedingly empty." Said he, "My clothes are as good as God wills them to be, and my wallet is as full as the Lord has been pleased to make it, and what pleases him pleases me." "But," said the doctor, "suppose God should cast you into hell." "Indeed, sir," said he, "but that would never be. But if it were, I would be contented, for I have two long and strong arms, faith and love, and I would throw these about the neck of my Savior, and I would never let him go, so that if I went there, he would be with me, and it would be a heaven to me. Oh, those two strong arms of faith and love, if you can but hang around about the Savior's neck, indeed you may fear no ill weather." Continuing on, 2 Samuel chapter 23, verse 24, through chapter 24, verse 25. Continuing with the list of David's mighty men. Indeed, with the 30, there were the following: Asahel, the brother of Joab, Elhanan, son of Dodo from Bethlehem, Shammah the Harodite, Elika the Harodite, Helez the Paltite, Ira son of Iklesh from Tekoa, Abiezer the Anatothite, Mabunai the Hushathite, Zalman the Ahohite, Maharai the Netophathite, Heled son of Bana the Netophathite, Ittai son of Ribai from Gibeah in Benjamin, Benaiah the Pirathonite, Hiddai from the wadis of Gash, Abi Albon the Arbathite, Azmaveth the Barhumite, Eliab the Shalbanite, the sons of Jashan, Jonathan son of Shammah the Hararite, Ahiam son of Sharar the Hararite, Eliphalet son of Ahasbai the Makathite, Eliam son of Ahithophel the Gilonite, Hezrai the Carmelite, Parai the Arbite, Egal son of Nathan from Zobah, Bani the Gadite, Zelek the Ammonite, Naharai the Beerothite, the armor-bearer of Joab son of Zeruiah, Ira the Ithrite, Gareb the Ithrite, and Uriah the Hittite. Altogether were 37. The Lord's anger again raged against Israel, and he incited David against them, saying, "Go count Israel and Judah." The king told Joab, the general in command of his army, "Go through all the tribes of Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, and muster the army, so I may know the size of the army." Joab replied to the king, "May the Lord your God make the army 100 times larger, right before the eyes of my lord the king. But why does my master, the king, want to do this? But the king's edict stood, despite the objections of Joab and the leaders of the army. So Joab and the leaders of the army left the king's presence in order to muster the Israelite army. They crossed the Jordan and camped at Aroer on the south side of the city, at the Wadi of Gad, near Jazer. Then they went on to Gilead, and to the region of Tatim, Hodshi, coming to Dan Jan, and on around to Sidon. Then they went to the fortress of Tyre, and all the cities of the Hivites and Canaanites. Then they went on to the Negev of Judah, to Beersheba. They went through all the land, and after 9 months and 20 days came back to Jerusalem. Joab reported the number of warriors to the king. In Israel there were 800,000 sword-wielding warriors, and in Judah there were 500,000 soldiers. David felt guilty after he had numbered the army. David said to the Lord, I have sinned greatly by doing this. Now, O Lord, please remove the guilt of your servant, for I have acted very foolishly. When David got up the next morning, the Lord had already spoken to Gad the prophet, David's seer. Go tell David, this is what the Lord says. I am offering you 3 forms of judgment. Pick one of them, and I will carry it out against you. God went to David and told him, Shall 7 years of famine come upon your land, or shall you flee for 3 months from your enemy, with him in hot pursuit? Or shall there be 3 days of plague in your land? Now decide what I should tell the one who sent me. David said to Gad, I am very upset. I prefer that we be attacked by the Lord, for his mercy is great. I do not want to be attacked by men. So the Lord sent a plague through Israel, from the morning until the completion of the appointed time. 70,000 men died from Dan to Beersheba. When the angel extended his hand to destroy Jerusalem, the Lord relented from his judgment. He told the angel who was killing the people, That's enough, stop now. Now the Lord's angel was near the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. When he saw the angel who was destroying the people, David said to the Lord, Look, it is I who have sinned and done this evil thing. As for these sheep, what have they done? Attack me and my family. So Gad went to David that day and told him, Go up and build an altar for the Lord on the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. So David went up, as Gad instructed him to do, according to the Lord's instructions. When Araunah looked out and saw the king and his servants approaching him, he went out and bowed to the king with his face to the ground. Araunah said, Why has my lord the king come to his servant? David replied, To buy from you the threshing floor, so I can build an altar for the Lord, so that the plague may be removed from the people. Araunah told David, My lord the king may take whatever he wishes and offer it. Look, here are the oxen for burnt offerings, and threshing sledges and harnesses for wood. I, the servant of my lord the king, give it all to the king. Araunah also told the king, May the Lord your God show you favor. But the king said to Araunah, No, I insist on buying it from you. I will not offer to the Lord my God burnt sacrifices that cost me nothing. So David bought the threshing floor and the oxen for 50 pieces of silver. Then David built an altar for the Lord there, and offered burnt sacrifices and peace offerings. And the Lord accepted prayers for the land, and the plague was removed from Israel. Yeah. So, first off, you had a list of David's mighty men, the 30 that followed the 7, who were the greatest among them. And among them were Ahithophel, who we had read about, who was slain, I think. Oh man, I can't remember who it was who slew him. But it was during the Civil War, in which I want to say Absalom rose up against David. Yeah, and him being Joab's brother, Joab hunted down his killer and killed him. And then you have Uriah the Hittite, who David seized his wife. Let's see, what do we have here? Verse 24. Eliam, the son of Ahithophel, This man is notable among the mighty men because he was the father of Bathsheba, and shows that Ahithophel was Bathsheba's grandfather. Interesting. And Uriah the Hittite, he is notable among the mighty men because he was the husband of Bathsheba. When David heard of Bathsheba's relation to Uriah and Eliam and Ahithophel, he should have put away every idea of adultery. Yeah, you had both son-in-law and father-in-law here, both as members of David's mighty men. 37 in all. These remarkable men were the foundation of the greatness of David's reign. They did not come to David as great men, but God used his leadership to transform them from men who were in distress, in debt, and discontented, who met David back at Adullam Cave. More than all his victories against outside foes, the influence of his life and character on the men nearest to him testify to his essential greatness. The anger of the Lord was aroused against Israel, and he moved David. The translators of the New King James Version believe that he in this sentence applies to God because they capitalize it. Yet 1 Chronicles 21:1 tells us, "Now Satan stood up against Israel and moved David to number Israel." The best explanation is that Satan prompted King David and is the he of 2 Samuel 24:1, yet the Lord expressly allowed it as chastisement against David. Now, the he there, we assume, would be the Lord, but as we find out in 1 Chronicles chapter 1, it was Satan that moved David's heart to the numbering of the people. So God opened the door and allowed Satan to move in and tempt David. From Smith. Yeah. And I guess I would also say that James specifically goes against the premise that God tempts anyone, for God does not tempt anyone, and there's no evil in him, essentially. But each one is tempted when he is carried away and enticed by his own lust. And I think Satan can seize on that opportunity and drag us into sin. But ultimately, God works everything out to the good. Go number Israel and Judah. This was dangerous because of a principle stated in Exodus 30, verse 12. When you take the census of the children of Israel for their number, then every man shall give a ransom for himself to the Lord. When you number them, that there may be no plague among them when you number them. The principle of Exodus 30:12 speaks to God's ownership of his people. In the thinking of these ancient cultures, a man only had the right to count or number what belongs to him. Israel didn't belong to David. Israel belonged to God. It was up to the Lord to command a counting, and if David counted, he should only do it at God's command and receiving ransom money to atone for the counting. Why does my lord the king desire this thing? Joab wasn't afraid to speak to David when he thought the king was wrong. With the best interest of both David and Israel in mind, Joab tactfully asked David to reconsider this foolish desire to count the nation. Joab also hinted at the motive behind the counting, pride in David. This thing that David desired was the increase of the nation, and he perhaps wanted to measure the size of his army to know if he had enough force to conquer a neighboring nation. He did it out of curiosity and creature confidence from trap. So late in his reign, David was tempted to take some of the glory in himself. He looked at how Israel had grown and prospered during his reign. It was remarkable indeed. The count was a way to take credit for himself. The spirit of vainglory and numbers had taken possession of the people and the king, and there was a tendency to trust in numbers and forget God. From Morgan. Nevertheless, the king's word prevailed against Joab and against the captains of the army. It wasn't only Joab who tried to tell David not to do this. The captains of the army also warned David not to count the soldiers in Israel, but David did so anyway. Yeah, and it was at great cost too, because here you had the army, the commanders occupied for 9 months, When they had gone throughout all the land, it took almost 10 months to complete the census. Ugh. David should have called off his foolish census during the 10 months, but he didn't. Joab gave the sum of the number of the people to the king. The results showed that there were 1,300,000 fighting men among the 12 tribes, reflecting an estimated total population of about 6 million in Israel. In the parallel place, 1 Chronicles 21:5, the sums are widely different. In Israel, 1,100,000; in Judah, 475,000. Neither of these sums is too great, but they cannot both be correct, and which is the true number is difficult to say, from Clark. 1,570,000. So, off by 270,000. To attempt to reconcile them in every part is a lost labor. Better at once acknowledge what cannot be successfully denied, that although the original writers of the Old Testament wrote under the influence of the divine Spirit, yet we are not told that the same influence descended on all the copiers of their words, so as absolutely to prevent them from making mistakes. From Clark. David's heart condemned him. The man after God's heart was not sinless, but he had a heart sensitive to sin when it was committed. David kept a short account with God. Take away the iniquity of your servant, for I have done very foolishly. David now saw the pride and vainglory that prompted him to do such a foolish thing. I offer you these three things. God used David's sin and the resulting chastisement to reveal David's heart and wisdom. His choice of the following three options were to test David. 7 years of famine. This would surely be the death of some in Israel, but the wealthy and resourceful would survive. Israel would have to depend on neighboring nations for food. Flee 3 months before your enemies. This would be the death of some in Israel, but mostly only of soldiers. Israel would have to contend with enemies among neighboring nations. 3 days plague in your land. This would be the death of some in Israel, but anyone could be struck by this plague, rich or poor, influential or anonymous, royalty or common. Now consider and see what answer I should take back to him who sent me. God wanted David to use the prophet as a mediator, and to answer the prophet instead of directly to God. Please let me fall into the hand of the Lord. This meant that David chose the 3 days of plague. In the other two options, the king and his family could be insulated against the danger, but David knew that he had to expose himself to the chastisement of God. Had he chosen war, his own personal safety was in no danger, because there was already an ordinance preventing him from going to battle. Had he chosen famine, his own wealth would have secured his and his own family's support. But he showed the greatness of his mind in choosing the pestilence, to the ravages of which himself and his household were exposed equally with the meanest of his subjects. From Clark. Do not let me fall into the hand of men. This meant that David chose the 3 days of plague. In the other two options, Israel would either be at the mercy of neighbors, as in the famine, or attacked by enemies. David knew that God was far more merciful and gracious than man. 70,000 men of the people died. This was a great calamity upon Israel, a devastating plague striking so many in such a short period of time. The Lord relented from the destruction. This justified David's wisdom in leaving himself in God's hands. He could not trust man to relent from destruction. Yet your hand, I pray, be against me and against my father's house. Like a true shepherd, David asked the punishment be upon him and his own household. Having another purpose to accomplish, God did not accept David's offer. Erect an altar to the Lord on the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. This is where David met the angel of the Lord, and where God relented from the plague before it came upon Jerusalem. Now God wanted David to meet him there and worship. Threshing floors were usually on a height, in order to catch every breeze. Some area to the north of David's city is indicated. From Baldwin. The threshing floor of Araunah had both a rich history and a rich future. 2 Chronicles 3:1 tells us that the threshing floor of Araunah was on Mount Moriah, the same hill where Abraham offered Isaac, and the same set of hills where Jesus died on the cross. To buy the threshing floor from you, to build an altar to the Lord. David wanted to transform this place where the chaff was separated from the wheat, into a place of sacrifice and worship. It would remain a place of sacrifice and worship, because this land purchased by David became the site of Solomon's temple. Yeah. It's interesting that this initial use of it was to serve as a mediator between God and man, and so it continued. Let my lord the king take and offer up whatever seems good to him. Araunah had a good, generous heart and wanted to give David anything he wanted. Had Araunah's noble offer been accepted, it would have been Araunah's sacrifice, not David's, nor would it have answered the end of turning away the displeasure of the Most High. From Clark. I will surely buy it from you for a price, nor will I offer burnt offerings to the Lord my God, that with that which cost me nothing. David knew that it would not be a gift nor a sacrifice unto the Lord if it did not cost him something. He didn't look for the cheapest way possible to please God. He who has a religion that costs him nothing has a religion that is worth nothing. Nor will any man esteem the ordinance of God if those ordinances cost him nothing. From Clark. Where there is true, strong love to Jesus, it will cost us something. Love is the costliest of all undertakings. But what shall we mind if we gain Christ? You cannot give up for him without regaining everything you have renounced, but purified and transfigured. From Mayor. And offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. This shows that David understood that the death of the 70 in Israel and the plague did not atone for his and Israel's sin. Atonement could only be made through the blood of an approved substitute. Burnt offerings were to atone for sin. Peace offerings were to enjoy fellowship with God. This shows us from the beginning to the end, David's life was marked by fellowship with God. We finally see the man after God's own heart turning the occasion of his sin and its punishment into an occasion of worship. From Morgan. So the Lord heeded the prayers for the land. 1 Chronicles 21:26 tells us that God shows his acceptance of David's sacrifice by consuming it with fire from heaven. God honored David's desire to be right and to fellowship with God by answering with divine blessing from heaven. So it always is when God's children draw near to their God and Father for cleansing and fellowship. Yeah. It's interesting to me that despite all of the instances where David fell short, where he directly went against the laws of the Lord, he was still accepted by God when he turned with a humble and contrite heart and repented of what he did. So I think that should give us great hope in that if we turn back to God, he's always willing to accept us. It may cost us, and it may cost us dearly, but Jesus is worth it. Anyhow, thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you have a great day.